Hey, Dustin here, Smoking Eagles Rod Shop, back with another video for you guys. Now, if you saw recently, we were at Cletus and Car's Burnout Rivals up in Indianapolis, Indiana. We had old Carmen here in the burnout pit for the second year in a row, and she was killing it, right? We were making hella tire smoke. We were doing way better than we did our first year. We clipped the wall again on the opposite side, just like we planned to do. And, yeah. Anyway, at the very end, they blow the whistle. I'm gonna turn and do a burnout out of the pad, do my little exit strategy, right? And she starts to bog a little bit. I give her some throttle and drop it into low, and it just shuts off. Don't know what happened. Get her back to the pits, and she's cranking super hard. Wasn't overheated or anything. Temp gauge was at like 180. Of course, the temp gauge could have been wrong. Thermostat could have got stuck. There's 100 things that could have happened. So, fast forward to today. It's been a couple of weeks. I've been doing a bunch of editing and things like that. And we just had Carmen in the shop there for our YouTube Live. If you want to check that out, you can go look at that. Jason and I kind of dug into her a little bit. Essentially, we pulled the belts and pulled all the spark plugs and loosened, took valve covers off and loosened all the valve train, checked everything, made sure everything looked right. Loosened all the valve trains so there was minimal amount of drag on the bottom end, which is what I feared since it started cranking hard, that I did something to the bottom end. Put a breaker bar on there and it does not spin free. It will rotate all the way around, but it is really tight, and there is a noticeable tight spot. There's no binding and there's no noise, and it doesn't really feel like metal on metal necessarily, but I am traveling through a big old crank in there and a breaker bar. Essentially, I have to put a cheater bar on it to get it to rotate at all. So I don't know what's wrong. I do know that when I got this car, there was mice living in the intake. We tore the heads off of it, did our little redneck rebuild, fired this thing up, threw her through like 6 or 8 burnouts straight, maybe more than that, I don't even remember. And then this summer, before Cletus and Cars, we went to full stage 1. We had the heads redone, we got a stage 1 cam, stage 1 springs, we got a big old Holly Brawler carburetor. Essentially the whole top end is all brand new and beefed up, and we tossed it on top of a 50-some-year-old bottom end and just gave her hell. I don't know how many miles were on this car. I don't know anything. But that bottom end, it put in some work. It really held up against the abuse that we've decided to give it. So I'm not going to bail on Carmen. Everybody loves Carmen. I just don't know what's wrong. So in order to figure that out, I need to get this motor out. I need to get it flipped upside down, and we need to tear the bottom end apart, and then we need to make a decision depending on what's wrong. I'm not even really going to speculate much on what's wrong. I just assume it's either a main or a rod bearing that is cooked, and we can assess it and then go from there. Do we just toss a different rod and bearing in it, or fix a main bearing and go on with life? Or is it to the point where we need to strip it down to bare block and send it off and get it bored? And if we're going to do that, we're not going to put stock pistons in it, because if you're going to spend the money, we're going to go like 11-to-1 or something cool and bump this thing up a few cam sizes, because why not, right? The only downside to this scenario that we're in right now is we had 4 or 5 burnouts planned for Carmen this year at our local track and some other places, and that's just obviously not going to happen because she doesn't run. It's kind of depressing, but on the other hand, I got plenty of other projects around here to work on with you guys, and obviously we have Carmen to work on. So no lack of enjoyment in the shop, no lack of projects in the shop. We're just, you know, one that we thought was kind of buttoned up, at least for the summer, and then we were essentially, what we're probably going to end up doing with the Buick here is what I planned on doing with the Buick like November, December of this year, not right now. I was hoping to have it running. So anyway, I do have a couple of tricks up my sleeve, and that's what we're going to do in today's video. I'll take you inside and I'll give you the down low. So check it out, guys. As you can see before you, I have 2 engines. What are they, Dustin? What is going on here? Do you really need more stuff? Well, the answer is yes. How can you be a car guy if you don't just shop Facebook Marketplace all the time and buy random engines that may or may not be any good? I don't know, but what else was I gonna do today? Sit around on the couch and watch somebody else's YouTube videos? Well, yeah, I did that too. But let me get you guys in here and I'll give you the lowdown on what we got going on. Now, if you've seen any of our YouTube lives, this is actually a 430 Buick. I believe it's a 68. It may be a 69. Here's the numbers off the back of it. 430 383 424. I will let you look those numbers up. You can find them online somewhere. Check that all out. Here's the casting number off the head, 1231109. You can look that up too and figure out exactly what these are. Now, I bought this engine off a guy and he said it was locked up. He was 100% correct. I put a breaker bar on the front of the crank and she goes about 6 to 8 degrees and hits the old paywall. Tick, tick, tick. And if you don't know what a paywall is, it's like when you're playing Farmville or your favorite little online video game and you're doing really good and then it pops up and says, for $10 you can get more lives, or for $10 you can get 20 more joules. That's a paywall. Now, when you're working on old cars and old engines and stuff like that, you hit paywalls a lot. Now, the real skilled guys know how to get around a paywall. And that's what I like to try and do. I like to be cheap as I possibly can. Now, sometimes I have to justify spending the money to make big horsepower and have lots of fun. And yeah, but for the most part, I like to try and save money. So there are a lot of good parts on this 430. I'm not going to build a 430 because bigger is better, and 455 is way bigger than a 430. But there's a lot of stuff on here that we can use that will help us on our journey of big block Buick power. So I'm going to strip this down. I'm probably going to sell the block to somebody for a steal deal, somebody that needs a good core that's, you know, the correct date code or whatever they need. These heads, unfortunately, this one here is cracked across the top of here. So this head's probably junk. That one's good, but who needs just one side of a cast iron head? These aren't really worth a whole heck of a lot, so I'll either sell them or I won't. I'm probably going to salvage all the valves out of it or the valve springs. I don't know. I'm just going to tear into this thing and see what we can get, put it all in a tote, and then we'll have it. You know, this is a good intake. This is the same intake that was on Carmen. It's a non-EGR intake, so if you have to run a stock cast iron intake, this is the best one. Now, I do have this 455 here that my son Matt drove me up to Michigan, thanks Matt, and helped me scoop up for a steal deal. Now, the guy I bought it off of said it had been sitting for 25 years in a barn. Well, quick inspection here. You can look and you can see daylight through this bottom pulley, which tells me when he said 25 years in a barn, he meant 25 years in a mud puddle. That's fine. They're not making any more of these 455s. And to be honest, this thing's in better shape than Carmen's engine was when I got Carmen, because she didn't have any of this up here and there was a mouse house down in there. So we've got a cool quadrijet carburetor. Of course, it's all froze up. I've got a bucket of carb stuff. We can just set that baby in for, I don't know, a week or two and see if that thing kind of frees up a little bit. It might be fun. Buy a rebuild kit, see if we can't get that to fire back up and actually work. Now, this intake is the EGR intake, so it's worthless to me. I would never use it because I've got two of those laying around that I would use long before this. And the one that we had on Carmen is ported already and runs really good. I would much rather have aluminum intake, so always got my eyes open and feelers out for those. But like I said, this engine, I don't know what we're really gonna do with it. A lot depends on what we find out about it. Need to pull the spark plugs here. The guy said it is locked up from sitting. I believe that. I mean, just look at it, guys. She's a little crusty. But we can get the plugs out of this. We can get some lube down inside the cylinders. I can get something on the front of the crank there, breaker bar, and see if we can't get it to budge a little bit. If it will turn even the slightest little bit after sitting for a while, we may have another good bottom end. Now this is going to be 8.5 to 1, just like Carmen was. Here's the numbers off the back of it. It's a 455, obviously, and these numbers look like 1, 2, 4, 1, 7, 8, 5, maybe. Anyway, I looked them up. It's a 72. I can't read the number down in there, so we'll have to get that all cleaned up, and that'll give us a little bit better idea of what car it came out of. But again, this is going to be a 72, so it's going to be even lower horsepower than Carmen was originally. But the cool thing about the 72 is it's going to be the same compression Carmen was. So the short block is the same as what's in Carmen right now that we spun a lower something. So essentially, if this thing was a decent short block, if I could clean this up and make a decent short block out of it, we could just swap everything from Carmen onto this short block and be back on the road, and then take Carmen's block down to the machine shop and have that start getting worked on, so we could have 2 455s, maybe like a stage 1, and then maybe like a next level. I don't know. I'm just wishful thinking at this point. Need to get tearing into this stuff, guys, so I'll get you up on the old tripod here. And yeah, I'll just start digging in, because that's what I need to do at this point, is just dig in and see what I really got here. But I'm pretty excited that I got this extra 455 here for a pretty good deal. And I know it's crusty. They're all crusty. They're not making it anymore. It's not a small block Chevy. They didn't make them for 75 years. They made them for like 8, okay? Yeah, a lot of this stuff is junk. We'll just strip it down because, again, we're going fast, right? So I got everything stripped off this intake, guys. It's time to pull this off of here. It's going to be really heavy. But I'm interested to see what's underneath here, because this 430, remember, she's got a paywall in there somewhere. I'm guessing it's in the bottom end, but we will find out in just a moment. Junk valley pan gasket. The old trash can there without hitting the old blue truck. Cam doesn't look terrible. Get you guys in here. So this is actually pretty clean down in here. As you can see, Cam doesn't look horrible. All the lobes are still there. Nothing's wiped out. So like I thought, it's probably in the bottom end. But that's all good news. That means that so far, this block is good to go for somebody that needs a good core. It's date coded right. So I'll get it stripped all the way down. Of course, all these lifters are trash. This cam will be trash. I don't know what all we're going to do with that stuff. And this one head here is cracked. But that head is good. I don't know how much these are worth. I'll do a little digging with all the old Buick guys on the old interwebs and see if one head is worth anything to somebody. All right, guys, so as you see, I got the water pump cover off of here. I haven't really messed around too much. I started pulling the top of the bolts out of the water pump, because obviously that water pump's junk. It's only good for maybe a core. You got to have a core for one of these water pumps. No big deal. Toss that off to the side. This housing's not in terrible shape, but it's not in good shape either. The only real issue that I have with it so far is somebody has stripped the threads out of the top of this housing here. They just stuck a wood or a machine screw through there with a flathead. There's obviously a much, much better way to do that. You run the actual size bolt through there, but you'd need to sand this off flush and then put a nut on top of there and hold the nut with a wrench and then torque it to spec, preferably like a Teflon nut or a nylon lock nut. You guys know what I'm talking about, and this housing is usable. Obviously, if you're building like 100% show car, that's probably not what you want, but for where we're going, this is a perfectly good housing for what we're doing. Now check this out, guys. Now this is the timing chain, and she's wore. You can see it's lifted all the way up off over here on this side, and look what was down in the gear right here. It was tight over here, and I pulled. That is the front main seal, and it got ate by the timing chain. I don't know if this is what was stopping this thing from rotating. This may be the only issue really with this engine, other than the head that I trashed, getting the other engine going. So these used to be plastic coated. They had like this plastic over top of here, and as that plastic would get brittle, it would just break off, and then the chains would be super loose. And when you replace them, you just get like a Comp Cams or whoever you want timing chain and gears, and it is full steel, and it eliminates all this drama. But yeah, it looks like this may have just needed a timing chain fixed, and that didn't get done. That's cool though, because that means this could be, I mean, look how much play there is there, guys. I don't know, maybe that was on purpose. Maybe they put that in there to take the slack out of the chain so they wouldn't have to replace it. Anyway, I'm gonna keep tearing into this thing. All right, guys, so I've been stripping her down for a little bit. Got the heads off of it. The heads really don't look bad, other than that one valve's kind of stuck open there. I don't know if you can see that. Not sure what's up with that, but only one of these heads is even any good. Not a big deal. Basically just harvest parts to see if we can't get that running maybe. So down in here, our pistons, looks like somebody put some oil in there because they thought it was seized up and not blown up. Not a big deal. Everything looks okay though. Those pistons don't look terrible. They don't look super crusty or anything. I mean, there's a bunch of dirt and garbage in there, but they don't look terrible. So I'm gonna flip this thing over and pull the pan, and that's probably where all the real carnage is. Bottom of that pan's really clean. So I wonder where our paywall is. Ah, we got a couple chunks of stuff over here. So let's dig in. Ugh. So if you look right down in there, you can see that there's a chunk of something laying there. There's a chunk of something laying right there. But I don't see anything broken. It's aluminum. I don't know what that is. It's just aluminum chunks. That is weird. All right, guys, I got the crank out finally. Took a ton of finagling to get it out of there. So I figured out what was wrong with the motor. I got 2 or 3 wrist pins completely seized. And it's just not letting her crank and turn. As you can see, this crank is in really good shape, guys. Now, I'm pretty sure, I'm not gonna lie to you and make stuff up, there's no ridge on any of these. Man, this thing's actually in really good shape. I'm not gonna lie to you. I think that a 400, 430, and 455 Buick cranks are all identical. I'm gonna do a little more research and make sure that I'm correct about that. If so, that means that I have a good 455 crank here, or a 430 or a 400. Anyway, I got the rest of these pistons to beat out of here. But now that the crank's out of the way, which was a complete nightmare to get out of there, since some of these, like, okay, so this one's good. This one's obviously good. This one's good. This one, completely seized. This one, completely seized. This one, completely seized. It's just, yeah, it's just all the wrist pins went bad. Not all of them, obviously, guys, but that's why we couldn't get this motor to turn. All right, guys, so as you can see, got her fully stripped down, and I think I actually found what caused the main failure of this engine. Remember that little chunk of steel that we found and we didn't know where it came from? Well, look right down in there. I don't know if you can see it or not, but that cam bearing, this cam bearing right here is paper thin. I don't know if you can see that, but I can just grab it and just peel it out of here like shim stock. Look at this. I just grabbed it and just peeled it out of there. That is probably what killed this engine. Chunk of that cam bearing started to just, it got so thin that it just started coming apart. And yeah, that and these wrist pins that are all froze up. But those could have been froze up after it sat. Don't know. I don't have the whole story on the engine, but I think this block, if new cam bearings were put in it, got dingle ball honed, that crank could go right back in this thing. Those pistons with brand new rings could go right back in this thing. They all look like they're in pretty good shape. If I could free up those wrist pins, maybe press them out, put new wrist pins in, and be off to the races with this. Now the heads are shot because I broke the one head, which stinks. But 430s, they oil up through the head, so I would want to go to 455 style heads and push rods anyway. The real question is that a good short block? Because if that's a good short block, we'll just use parts that we have here to get that going. If that's not a good short block, I may use parts off of that, like the heads, bolt them onto this, bolt this thing back together. I can get main bearings and rod bearings for about 200 bucks, and we could potentially have a runner here. A 430 in 69, which is the year of this, made like, what did it make? I don't know, you could Google it, but I think they made like 370 horse, 360 horse, and like 470 torque. So definitely no pooch. You can see the pistons aren't flat, but they are not dished by much. We could clean these all up and get new rings on there. I don't know what we're gonna do, but I got Matt out here helping me for a few minutes. We're gonna get this block off of here so I can get this engine stand out of here, organize some of these parts in a tote, mark and label some things, and then we can get to tearing that motor apart. So I'll get that stuff all organized, and I'll meet you guys back here in a few, and we'll start ripping into the next engine. All right, guys, so I got the 430 completely stripped down, and yeah, made a pretty good assessment of the goodies that it had to offer. And I made it over here to Krusty, the 455 that Matt and I bought from Michigan. It was in a barn for 30 years, aka mud puddle. And yeah, my brother Corey came over to hang out, help wrench on some stuff, and we're gonna start tearing into this thing and see if it's just a pile of spare parts or if we got a good short block or maybe a set of heads or maybe a, you know,
something.
Yeah, I don't know. At least I can keep this because I'm sure I'll pull another engine at some point. Anyway, I'll toss you guys on time lapse so you can listen to some sweet music while we argue and complain and bust our knuckles on this old crusty 455.
Oil's a little rich.
Oh, yeah, well, price has gone up. Alright guys, so we got the carburetor off of here and ripped a bunch of junk off as we thought. Looks pretty crusty. Two of the front carburetor bolts just broke off in the intake, but luckily you can see them, they're sticking up here, so you know, if anybody ever wants to use this intake, that guy can deal with that. Got to beat a socket on this, and then we should be able to pop the intake off. But Corey reminded me we need to drain the oil, and let's see what it looks like, if it even has any. Your hand's gonna get gross. Oh, look, it's water. Oh, that looks like vomit. Or actually, it looks like something else, but yeah. Sorry, kids.
We're not gonna.
That's gross. I remember my kids leaving some of those presents for me. Oh yeah. How thick is that?
It's very.
It's oil. It actually has some oil consistency to it.
Hey, we might be able to reuse this.
Yeah. We could reuse this in, you know, somebody else's car. I think that isn't recycled oil what the Teslas use now?
I think so.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Free plug-in charge.
And I actually have a Tesla.
Here at Smoking Eagles Rod Shop, we believe in disappointment.
No, it's just a part of one. It's like that Johnny Cash song, One Piece at a Time. That's kind of what I'm working on. And yeah, when I find pieces of Teslas laying on the side of the highway, I just pick them up. Eventually, I'll have a free one. All right, guys, so we got the distributor loose, and it wiggles back and forth, but it don't want to come out. This bolt, somebody mentioned how easily everything was coming apart, and then this bolt decided that, yeah, it's not coming out. That decided, yeah, that's not coming off. And the distributor decided it's not coming out. So
it's Jason's fault.
Yeah, we bailed on this, and we pulled the valve covers off. I just shop vacked out that side there. Got a lot of the loose crap off the top of the intake, so we can pop that off here in a second. But this is what inside the valve covers look like. Pretty crusty. But these are the late model rocker shafts and rocker arms. They look kind of like GM stuff. The push buttons, if you saw the stage 1 upgrade on Carmen, you know what this is all about. You can see some of these push rods go down through here, and they're not exactly lined up in the center of anything, and they're kind of offset, so yeah, it is what it is. I'm going to get this all swept out so there's less garbage falling down on the motor. Look at this, guys. It's just rust from humidity sitting on the inside of that valve cover. Over the years, it's sitting in a
mud spot.
Yeah, it's like a climate controlled environment, and it just draws condensation and it just eats away at stuff. All the internals are in good shape. It's just like those super thin valve covers. You can see like this one here where it's just delaminating and coming apart, and it's just falling down on all this. But we can tear this all apart, clean these all up. These heads, there's probably nothing wrong with them at all, other than they're filthy. And once you clean them up, they're no longer filthy anymore. You know, sometimes you got to take a bath. But yeah, there's the old casting number 1242445. What's that one over there on that side?
Same number 1242445. 445.
So these heads match this motor. They're probably the original heads. Sometimes you'll tear a motor apart and one head will have a different casting number than another one.
Also, it says GMF21.
Okay. Yep.
Is that what it says over there?
I don't know. That's just the GM casting mark, so
Yeah,
it doesn't really matter. This one says F15, but that don't matter. It's that casting number back here that matters.
Right.
Sometimes you'll have, if the casting number is different, you know it's a different head. Or if the date codes are different, you know that one of them's probably been changed.
Swapped out.
Yep, for whatever reason. Anyway, let's bust this intake off of here, guys. I'll get you down here so you can just watch the big reveal. There we go. Now these things weigh more than Free Willy.
And if you paid attention on the last episode...
Yeah, and if you paid attention on my Stage 1 upgrade, I mentioned how heavy these were. Do you know how heavy they are?
I'm going to take a wild guess, pretty freaking heavy.
Yeah, they're heavy. You ready? Which way are we going to go with this thing?
Why don't we go up?
Right down there on the floor?
Yep, I'm down.
All right, let me move this out of the way. Move, Master Saki. Yep. Move that gasket off. There we go. 2 people, it's manageable. But yeah.
Look at that.
Wow. That actually, so if you've ever heard me mention valley pan gaskets, this is the reason for a valley pan gasket. You can see there's a little bit of carbon buildup in here, and who knows how many miles are on this engine. But if this valley pan gasket wasn't here, hot oil would have splashed on the bottom of this intake the whole time this thing was running, and the bottom of this would be just absolutely coated. There is some there because obviously it's going to build up over time eventually.
You want to bring that up and show the camera?
No, because it's too heavy. But it looks about like this does, which is not that bad. I've seen some really bad stuff before. Look at this. It's really not that bad, dude.
It looks like it just needs some cleaning up.
I mean, it's crusty, but it's nothing like Carmen was. You remember the videos of Carmen? It was caked full of walnuts.
Yep.
This isn't that terrible. Obviously, this all needs tore apart. Valves all need removed, cleaned up, like I said.
The whole 9.
Yeah. Let's get this intake gasket out of here. Should be able to just pry this over like that and get this side. And we can see down inside the belly of the beast. There we go. There's some crust in there. I'll sweep that out real quick.
Smells like old oil in a pond.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. But this is what we got. Just some carbon that fell down in here. And actually, is that mold?
That's mold.
Yeah, I wouldn't taste that. Yeah. Yeah, get rid of those old rubbers. And yeah, so we got all this carbon buildup in here. Just kind of fell off of the intake and stuff. We'll try and get this all swept out of here before it falls down inside the engine into the important bits. All right, guys, so just got the head off of here, and unfortunately, this is not a good short block. You see all that looks like transmission fluid. That's from me. That's marble mystery oil. But unfortunately, this is not good. Yeah, cylinder wall, not good. That is just crud of some kind. I don't know what that is. But that's unrepairable damage. Right there.
Emotional damage.
Yeah, the whole side of the block. Look at that, guys. I don't know how that happened. That could have happened from this thing freezing with water in it. I don't know. But that's a bummer. Probably still good parts here, though. Not the pistons. but maybe the rods are good. And, well, at least a couple of them are going to be good. I mean, there's no way all the rods in this are trash. But, yeah, we may have to, I don't know, bolt that 430 together. Since this block isn't any good.
Stay tuned.
You never know what's going to happen around here. Let's get that other head off of there and continue on. Man, that is some serious sludge. I would love to try to save this, guys, but unfortunately, this just isn't savable. Look at that. Sat in a barn for 30 years. This is what you call a barn find. I don't know. Does anybody out there think they can get this running? Can you weld that shut with a Harbor Freight welder? All jokes aside, we're going to get this other head off of here. Bummer. But it happens. That's what happens when you buy stuff that's been laying in a mud puddle, and you hope for the best.
Buy sight unseen.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is what it is. We do have a set of heads, so, I mean, they're not great heads, but they're not terrible heads. And maybe we'll get a crankshaft and some rods out of the deal. Definitely got this front housing. If I can get that off without busting it, we'll have a good front housing. And at least a pulley. That pulley's trash, but we'll have another harmonic balancer. Alright guys, so we got a little bored and we decided to flip this thing open and ponder inside the belly of the beast. Now, it actually doesn't look too bad in here. The oil pickup tube's a little slimy, but I'm guessing that's just from water and moisture getting in here.
Under the sea.
Yeah. Other than that, everything else looks pretty good. I don't see any, like, you know, super major issues with anything. Nothing really scary. We're getting kind of tired and hungry and bored. Yeah, but anyway, inside here doesn't look too bad. I got a couple hours of stripping this down left to go, and then I got to figure out what to do with this engine block. Now I have two 455 engine blocks laying around. It could probably be sleeved. I don't know. It's probably not worth it.
Barbecue grill.
I could make a barbecue grill, a 455 barbecue grill. Because, you know, I've seen guys make barbecue grills out of 350 small blocks. But,
right.
You know.
Why can't you do a 455?
Yeah, well, you know, bigger is better. To be honest, guys, I don't think this was blown up. I think when they pulled it, it probably did run, like the guy said. And then it sat in a mud puddle or something. And water filled this cylinder. It froze, cracked, and busted that cylinder wall. These blocks are really thin. You can see how thin that block is there. I named it Krusty because I thought it was a pretty cool name.
I think Krusty works.
Except Krusty's probably not going to be a power plant unless we make it a grill, and then it'll be a power plant for me because it will feed me food.
You can make Krusty Krab burgers.
I can make Krusty burgers. That's actually a really good idea. I like that. Anyway, guys, yeah, I'll keep tearing into this tomorrow. All right, guys, so I got the old timing chain, water pump housing, oil pump, you know, the do everything at once aluminum housing off of there. And looking at the timing chain and gears, it's actually pretty wild. This top gear still has the plastic coating on it. These are the plastic bits that you find down in your oil pan on all them GM 70s GM motors. This is what they look like after that coating falls off. See the difference? Super wild. And this chain, it's loose, but it's not like super duper loose, but it would have started working on that gear. So this motor's been laying around for a long time. It must not have had very many miles on it. And then they probably left it lay in the mud. Water filled that cylinder up and froze and cracked and destroyed this block. Yeah, that just stinks. Right there's the hole. right into this water jacket. It just dropped right down in here. There's our hole. Goes right through. See Matt's finger? Yep, super crazy. Anyway, I'm gonna keep tearing this down so we can get the crank and the pistons out of this block. Well guys, I think that's gonna do it for our engine teardowns. Unfortunately, this thing was in a lot worse shape than I had kind of hoped. We did get a good crank out of it down here, so that's good. The front timing cover, that's in good shape other than being all slimy and gross. And we've got a set of heads that I think we all know I can save. That being said, there's a few other things here and there. Got a good set of manifolds, valve covers. Of course, those are dirt cheap. Maybe, I don't know, they're pretty crusty. But I do have an idea for this engine that I think you guys are gonna dig. If you wanna know how thick the cylinder walls are in a 455 Buick, that is the chunk of cylinder wall. Goes right down in there. I pulled it out, that's pretty thin. And we were running Carmen at Cletus and cars at like $5 grand. That's pretty sick. Anyway guys, I'll post some other videos around my melon here of stuff we do around the shop. Hopefully you guys are enjoying all the crazy content, whether it's old mowers, the Buick stuff, the El Camino burnouts, my van. Doing a little bit of everything. Oh, painting a Camaro. We're doing it all. And yeah, I enjoy taking you guys with me. So, till next time, keep on wrenching.